Hello and welcome, this is the Coinimus Reads, and today I'm going to be reading the prophecy and the prologue for the fourth book of the Wings of Fire series, The Dark Secret by T. Sutherland. When the war has lasted 20 years, the Dragonets will come. When the land is soaked in blood and tears, the Dragonets will come. Find the swimming egg of deepest blue, wings of night shall come to you. The largest egg and mountain high will give to you the wings of sky. For wings of earth surge through the mud, for an egg the color of dragon blood. And hidden alone from the rival queens, a sandwing egg awaits unseen. Of 3 queens who blister, blaze, and burn, 2 shall die and 1 shall learn. If she bows to a fate that is stronger and higher, she'll have the power of wings of fire. 5 eggs to hatch on brightest night, 5 dragons born to end the fight. Darkness will rise to bring the light, the Dragonets are coming. Prologue. The ice dragons came out of nowhere. It should have been a quiet night. They shouldn't have seen anyone with skywings and other mudwings on their patrol along the mountainous border between their kingdoms. There hadn't been a battle near their village since the one where they lost Crane 16 days ago. Reed still couldn't think about that battle without feeling a huge pit open inside his chest. Sometimes he wanted to close his eyes and fall into that pit and never come out. But he couldn't. He had 4 other brothers and sisters who depended on him. He was their leader, their bigwings. Even though he knew now that he wasn't supposed to be. It should have been their big brother Clay, whose egg was stolen before they all hatched. "Did you hear that?" Umbra whispered, darting up to fly beside him. The smallest dragon in their motoring troop of siblings, Umbra was also the most observant. Reed knew by now that it was always worth listening to him. "What?" Reed whispered back, tilting his head and straining his ears. His wings caught the air currents as they both soared higher, and he studied the dark, jagged shapes of the claws of Cloud's mountains. He couldn't see any movement or hear any wing beats. Still, he twisted around to check on his brothers and sisters, calling them closer with a flick of his tail. In a moment, Pheasant, Sora, and Marsh were flying in a close formation behind him. "I thought I heard hissing," Umber said, "somewhere close by." Reed glanced down uneasily at the shadowy trees that covered the mountain slope below them. Anything could be hiding in there. But the only sound he heard was the Sandwing General up ahead, calling at top volume as if Stealth Patrol were only a funny name for what they were doing. "Move it, Mudwings," bellowed the Sand Dragon. His squadron of 7 Sandwings, all fiercely loyal to Queen Byrne, hovered behind him, grunting. "I want to rev up this patrol and get some sleep tonight." It was probably nothing, Umber said to Reed, and that was when the 9 ice dragons suddenly shot out of the forest and attacked the Sandwings. It was so fast, so calculated and swift and sudden, that the 2 Sandwings were sent spiraling toward the ground with shredded wings and blood pouring from their throats before Reed could even process that this was a real attack. Marsh shrieked with terror and grabbed Reed, nearly tumbling the bigwings out of the sky. Marsh had never really recovered from their first battle, where he'd seen their sister Crane die in front of him. "I need to do something about that," Reed thought, "but not right now." "Marsh, keep it together," he shouted, pulling his wing free. "Come on, quick, we have to help." He saw the hesitation on all their faces and caught himself wondering, again, what Clay would have done in this situation, and whether the others would have been happier and safer following him, and also wondering whether they were wondering that too. But no one said what they must be thinking. "It's a suicide mission. What help can we be? I don't want to lose another sibling." Instead, they formed up behind him and dove toward the writhing dragons. Reed hated fighting Icewings. Their serrated claws seemed 10 times sharper than normal claws, and their whip-thin tails left stinging marks across the snout and wings. Worst of all, they could just breathe on you and kill you. He shot a burst of fire at the biggest Icewing, who was grappling with the Sandwing General. Her teeth snapped shut, and she hissed at him, but she was too busy with the Sandwing to come after Reed. He spun in the air, lashing out at silvery white scales as another Icewing attacked his flank. They clutched each other with fierce talons for a moment, the wind buffeting their wings. Finally, Reed managed to cough out another bolt of flames, and the Icewing jerked away, narrowly avoiding a singed nose. Reed spotted an Icewing diving toward Umber and loved to knock his brother aside, catching the brunt of the white dragon's momentum against his chest. As he staggered back, he saw another Icewing wrap her dangerous claws around Sora's neck, and he roared with fury. Pheasant was there in an instant, throwing the Icewing off Sora, but the ice dragon came back at them with her mouth open to shoot her frost breath. "I can't lose anyone else," Reed thought. "It'll kill me." He smashed into the Icewing's side and sliced his claws across her throat while she was twisting to breathe on him. Her eyes went wide and she made an agonized gargling noise as blood bubbled from her wounds. When he let go of her, the Icewing soldier fell toward the dark forest, her wings twitching feebly like a dying grasshopper. "Retreat!" a voice suddenly howled. Reed's heart jumped hopefully, thinking the Ice Wings were giving up. But then he realized it was the Sandwing General. "Retreat!" the Sand Dragon yelled again. Reed thought they might defeat the Ice Wings if they kept fighting, but it wasn't worth the risk. Every moment was another opportunity for an Ice Wing to kill one of his brothers or sisters. Retreating meant keeping them alive. "Retreat!" he echoed the general, grabbing Umber and pulling him back. "Fall back! Pheasant, you too!" He scanned the struggling shapes in the moonlight and picked out his troop, all still alive for now. His sister sank her teeth into her opponent's forearm, and he released her with a shriek of pain. In a flash, she was at Reed's side, and they soared up into the sky with Marsh, Sora, and Umber right beside them. Reed saw the Sandwings take off towards the mountains. Most of the Ice Wings shot after them. Only 2 turned to pursue him and his siblings. "This way!" he cried, diving for the forest. If the Ice Wings could hide in there, so could his dragons. He wasn't obligated to follow the Sandwings. They'd probably make a run for the Sky Palace anyway, and he didn't want to lead the Ice Wings back to his village. Pine branches whipped against his face as he hit the trees. His brothers and sisters had practiced a formation like this, zipping through an overgrown forest while staying together. He had to trust that they'd remember it and be close behind him. He heard the sound of thrashing wings farther back and risked a glance over his shoulder. Even in the shadows, he recognized the shape of how his brothers and sisters flew. They were all there. It must be the Ice Wings who got caught in the upper branches. Reed took a chance and landed. The other dragons dropped to the ground with him, and they all immediately flattened themselves with wings outstretched, becoming puddles of shadow on the dark forest floor. Silence fell. No one breathed. The branches creaked overhead, and small night animals skittered through the bushes around them. Reed felt a squirrel dart over his foot, but he didn't move a muscle. After a long while, they heard a faraway whistle and the sound of wings in the distance, as if the Ice Wings had reassembled to fly away. Reed still didn't move. He waited for almost an hour, until he couldn't hold his breath any longer, until any and all dragon noises had faded long ago. Then, very carefully and quietly, he inhaled. He heard the others do the same. "Is anyone hurt?" Reed asked softly. "That was awful," Marsh whispered. "I thought we were all going to die." "I'm fine," Pheasant said. "Nothing that won't heal soon." "I'm all right, too," Sora said hoarsely. "Umber?" Reed said, when the smallest dragon didn't respond. "I hate this war," Umber burst out. "I don't understand what we're even fighting for. Who cares who the Sandwing Queen is? I've never met Burn, and I don't want to. Why am I fighting an Ice Wing over a throne that has nothing to do with either of us?" "Because our queen says we have to," Pheasant said, with a little more sarcasm than Reed thought was safe, even though there was no one to overhear. "Queen Moorhen must have a good reason for allying with Burn and the Skywings," Reed said. "We shouldn't doubt her." "Besides, the war will be over soon," Sora said unexpectedly. She hardly ever spoke, and she'd spoken even less since Crane's death. Reed turned and saw her eyes reflecting the glow of the moonlight. "Clay's going to end it." There was something about the way she said Clay's name that made Reed want to sink into a mud puddle and stay there for a month. She sounded as if she believed in him so much, a dragon they barely met. They followed Reed and they loved him, he knew that. But surely they must wonder what could have been, and whether Crane might still be alive if Clay were their bigwings all along. "That's true," Umber said, lifting his head. "Clay and his friends, they're going to save us soon." "How soon?" Marsh asked. "I thought the prophecy said 20 years. Doesn't that mean 2 more years before they end the war?" "Actually," Pheasant said, "some dragons think it depends on when you start counting. If you count from the first battle, then it's only been 18 years. But if you go back to the death of Queen Oasis, which is really when this whole thing started, then it's been almost 20. She got the tilt of Reed's head and shrugged. "I've been reading about the prophecy since we realized Clay is in it." There was a pause as they all had their own thoughts about Clay, the war, and the prophecy. "If you're all unhappy," Reed said tentatively, we could try to find the Talons of Peace." Pheasant let out a shocked hiss. "I may not like this war, but that doesn't mean we should leave our tribe and our home. We're Mudwings. We belong in our village." "Unless you think we should leave," Marsh said, leaning against Reed's side. "I'll do whatever you decide." "We all will," Umber said. Reed knew they would, but should they? He had no idea what to do. Betray his tribe, or keep risking his siblings' lives? "You don't have to decide tonight," Pheasant said more gently. "We just had a narrow escape. Let's go home and sleep. We'll all feel better in the morning." Reed nodded and they gathered themselves, stretching their cramped wings as best they could under the trees. Showers of pine needles slid across their scales, smelling of winter fires. "What were those Ice Wings doing here anyway?" Marsh asked, stamping his feet. "I have no idea," Reed said. "It seemed as though they were lying in wait for us, but it's not like we're an important patrol. Perhaps they were here for something else, and we were unlucky enough to attract their attention. Maybe they were here for the scavenger den, Umber said. What scavenger den? Reed glanced at him surprised. Can't you smell it? Umber asked. We flew over part of it, too. It's pretty well hidden in the forest. How do you notice something like that in the middle of a frantic escape? Pheasant demanded. Umber shrugged. Why would the Ice Wings care about a scavenger den? Sora asked softly. They all thought for a moment, and then looked at Reed. I don't know, he said helplessly. It felt like he was saying that all the time these days. Well, Pheasant said, spreading her wings, it doesn't matter. What matters is we survived another battle, thanks to Reed. I wonder if they really feel that way, he thought. I certainly don't. I hope we survive the next one, Marsh said gloomily. I hope we don't have to, Umber said. I hope Clay fulfills the prophecy and ends the war and saves the world really soon, before we have to do any more fighting. Don't you think? Maybe he will. Maybe, Pheasant said. I hope so. I do too, Reed said. He looked up at the stars. Before the war takes anyone else I care about, before our village is destroyed, before I have to choose between loyalty to my tribe and the safety of my brothers and sisters, before we have to kill anyone else. I hope so too. And that is the end of the prologue. Once again, this is the fourth book in the Wings of Fairy series by T. Sutherland. Have a great day.